good afternoon, depending upon where you're at. My name is Rob Mattern with Mattern, and welcome to the April coffee break being co-hosted by Zebraworks. And I'm honored to be here with Bill Bice, CEO of Zebraworks, and Kim Basham, Chief Revenue Officer. How are you guys doing?
Rob, doing great. It's great to be here with you.
Doing well. Yeah, good afternoon, Rob.
Okay, this should be a great topic today. We don't consult in this space, and when I started hearing more about this whole opportunity for firms to increase their revenue by 15 to 25% and looking into it more and talking with your company, it really is an amazing opportunity. So I'm as excited to talk about this as anything I've looked at in the last couple of years. What we're going to focus on today is how the firms are losing that 15 to 25% their potential revenue due to breakdown in their billing and collection process. A little housekeeping before we dive into it. Everyone's muted. Please feel free to submit questions through the chat function, and we will work them into the discussion. If we don't get to them, we will take some time at the end and address them. If there's something we really don't get to in the time frame here, we'll follow up separately to make sure they get answered. The conclusion of the coffee break, there are some exit questions. Please take the time to fill them out. And that all being said, we'll get started. Bill, we talk about your solution, but exactly what is causing this problem of firms losing 15 to 25%?
Yeah, your attorneys do the work. They solve the problem for the client, but then this gap between what the attorney does, the time that gets captured, what then gets turned and put on a bill and delivered to a client and collected, when you trace that waterfall of realization from the utilization to from the standard rate to the negotiated rate to billing adjustments to write-offs, the end result of that is a step in every part of the process. And so the goal of focusing on this whole process of work to cash is how do we optimize every one of those steps in order to increase that realization all the way through.
Interesting. Okay, and before we start getting into more of, again, the history of the problem, how did you get started at looking at this area?
I came from, really, I'm back in legal because Ken and I got together and decided we would come back. I don't think I'd be doing this if it wasn't for you, Ken. We have
Sorry.
this incredible team, right? No, it was a good thing. I've gotten to the point where Robin, we were talking about this as we were coming into this session, which is that it's so important these days who we're working with, like the quality of life of doing this. And so just the incredible team we have and the clients that we get to work with. And so when Ken and I got back together, like the first thing we did was we went out and talked to many firms that we had worked with in the past. And so what you went out and did that with me, Ken, what was like, we got this same reaction over and over again.
Yeah, and I think it comes from our background originally, right, in financial management systems. So we had a sneaking suspicion. And then in talking to the firms and just asking if folks had solved this yet from a holistic point of view, like the one platform point of view, because that's really the key to what Bill was saying. The answers we kept getting back and again were no, there's still a blind spot here, or still we feel like we're missing something. And so that's really what we spent a lot of time and attention trying to address.
Interesting. I know I'm going off the process here, but why wouldn't a firm go down this path?
So when we got started doing this in 21, it was a bit of a missionary process of saying there is a new way to tackle this. And there were firms that were taking horizontal invoices to cash systems and trying to make them work in legal, which is challenging because the financial management systems are specific in this market. The workflows are legal specific. So it's difficult in order to do that. So the problem was recognized and firms were trying to do something about it, but it wasn't at the point where there was an accepted path for how you solve the problem. And so what firms have been doing for the longest time is just throwing more people at the problem. So this has been one of the highest growth areas in terms of FTEs in firms, billing and collections. Like the staff from pandemic forward has been reduced in almost every area in a firm except for billing and collections. This has been the real growth
Really?
area.
Yeah, that's
And it's
interesting.
because it's such a challenging area. It's just full of all kinds of issues. But there's a point where you just can't throw more people at the problem. You need better tools, better automation. You need to put some AI to work. You need to leverage better tools for those people as opposed to just throw more people at it.
Fascinating. You're right. And think about it. This is the one area. Every other area of the firms are being decreased, except maybe marketing. We see, yeah. But you're exactly right. The whole administrative side being gutted. Everyone's talking about doing things with less people, and except for billing. I'm trying to get those bills out the door and money collected.
And it makes sense to invest in that area, right? Because
Yeah.
there's a direct ROI. You hire somebody focused on this, they bring more money in. It makes sense. But there's only so far you can push that. You really got to have a better process and a better approach.
Okay, let's talk about that process. And really, how the history of the whole billing in the legal market, and how do we get to where we're at today? That a product like yours is so needed.
There's been a ton of investment in the core of billing and finance. So we've seen that over the last X number of decades. It's how Ken and I got started building a financial management system. And then Ken, how long were you at Elite?
I think another 18 years or so. So just a
Yeah.
brief stop. Yeah.
Yeah. And so finally managed to pull you back out of there. And so we have a team with a ton of experience from the financial management side, and firms have invested a ton in making the billing process itself better. But the last stage of what happens once we've got the bill finalized, and we've got to make this crucial jump from the bill to getting paid, that's the piece that's been missing. And that's the feedback that we were getting when we decided to come back to the market.
There was
So, go ahead, Ken.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, I mean, it led itself a bit. So when you look at all the investment in time entry systems outside of the practice management system or pre-bill investment outside of the practice management system, the next logical step was this outside of the practice management system. So it led us there.
Okay. Oh, I take it. Walk us through the process. Okay, so a firm wants to install ZebraWorks, wants to get this 15 to 25%. How does the process work? And are the clients involved at that point, or how does that work?
Yeah, do you want to walk through the big picture, Ken?
Yeah, certainly can. So there's a few different elements that we're helping in. The very first one is just a more sophisticated way of delivering bills, which when you talk about the whole invoices to cash space, it actually starts before invoices, back when it was worked, to be able to see the kind of all the data as a whole in order to do that. So the very first thing that we can help folks do, which shaves a few days off on the whole time cycle, is in that bill delivery. The reason that it's hard is because all the exceptions. So people have tried to automate it in the past, and exceptions come up that folks can't handle. And so then it just stops it in its tracks. The next part is being able to track the bill delivery and see who's paying attention to it, who's interacting with it, who's doing that. And then applying that same workflow and automation on the AR notice side to follow up on those bills, to try to take it to the payment piece, which is the final piece at a real high level, which is like an actual client portal that gives our clients the ability to see all the detail that they need to see, remembers who they are, and just makes it a much better payment experience. And so putting all those things together and then looking at it from a data QAI standpoint is how we say that just brings the pieces together. And that's ultimately what it does. So there's some low-hanging fruit that you can do right out of the gate, which is not a huge investment on the firm side, and then iterating over time to really make it specific to their billing patterns and their clients' payment patterns and things like that is what we continue to help them on.
Interesting. What are the biggest hurdles?
Change management, right? That's always one of the hurdles there, is we've always done it this way. When you get under the hood though, there's some very specifics that make this difficult to accomplish from a change management. So it's very important you do it in a certain way. And that often is because attorneys are involved in the process, right? So I want to send my own bills. I want to send my own AR notices. And so when they're part of the process, they're also part of bringing the exceptions because they want to do it specific ways. So you got to have a system flexible enough to be able to accommodate those different requests and different needs, or otherwise automation will never take off.
Yeah, that's really the key thing. And it's something we talk about all the time, which is that this process is full of exceptions, which breaks normal automation. And so the key is being able to deal with all of those and either have tools that smooth out those exceptions or eliminate them, because we're dealing with professional services and
Be
with
acting up a little
very,
bit.
very demanding clients, very demanding attorneys.
I tell you, Bill, you froze up there for about 20 seconds.
It was probably the most brilliant thing I ever said.
I tell you, that's why I want you to repeat it.
So that piece about exceptions is particularly important because that's what makes automation so difficult, because it normally breaks automation. And so we put a lot of effort into dealing with the exceptions that make this area so difficult. It's why there's so many people involved typically, is because of the manual work around it. And managing what the attorney needs and what the client needs and delivering on that is difficult to do. But if you're going to put scale into the process and increase the velocity of your billing and collections, then that's the problem that you have to tackle. So that's the biggest process challenge. And then there's some really interesting technical challenges in terms of how do you have the depth of the information and the way that you have processed it and analyzed it so that you can go find the opportunities to pull cash forward. So we're doing that at the transaction level in order to understand what's really happening through the entire life cycle of billing and collections in a firm.
Okay. What percentage of firms are using this type of system? Now, what's 10% of the marketplace?
Less than 20% for sure. That doesn't mean that they don't have point solutions that are doing different pieces of this, because those exist and they've been out there for a while and all of those things. But if you look at it from a holistic standpoint and you're starting from kind of A to Z, so the work all the way to cash, one platform accomplishing that all, there's not a lot of solutions out there. And so I would say that a full adoption of that is definitely less than 20%.
Okay. Okay. Are you you mentioned about possibly showing the workflow here in a slide?
I want to show
anything you want to guys?
Yeah, I want to show an example of the kind of results that we get from doing this, because it's pretty amazing. One of the things that makes this so enjoyable is that the direct ROI from what we do, it's just really easy to see what the benefit is. And so I'm going to pop in here into DataQ AI and show what this looks like. And so I want to start with work to cash, because what's really compelling about this is that you have to break outside of the traditional period-based reporting in order to really understand what's going on with the velocity of your billing and collections.
Hey,
And
Bill, I might suggest real quick that you might turn your camera off, especially while we're showing, just because it's breaking up just a little bit. And alternatively, I can pull it up and you can speak to it. So we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out one way or the other. Are you back with us, Bill?
I'm trying to be.
Okay.
Can you bring that up, Ken?
Yep. I'm going to bring it up. Sorry about that. We will get that going right now. And give me just 1 second. And we will pull that in. And then maybe, Bill, you can speak to it if you want.
Yeah, did I come back?
Yeah, you're with us loud and clear. And I think this is where you wanted to get to. So is that better?
It is. And so what we're looking at is work to cash. And what's really compelling about this is, so this is for 25. And the reason that I wanted to, let's see if my internet connection will work long enough for me to show this. I'm going to start by showing 24 here. And what we're looking at.
We're sharing my screen right now, Bill. I don't know if you're able to see that or not, or I can stop sharing if you want to put that up.
Let's see. Why don't you stop and let me give it a shot and see if it'll come through.
There we go. Yeah, looks good.
Mm.
Or it did. Share one more time.
How are we doing?
There we go.
Okay, there we go.
Excellent. I'm starting by looking at 24. And so this is all the work we did in 24. And then when was that work actually billed and collected, regardless of when that happened? And so I'm breaking outside of just looking at a period-based view of that. And then I'm going to analyze how is that lockup occurring, broken down into days to bill and days to pay across the various different ways that we can look at that in the firm. And what's important about this is that we've modeled this demo data around actual results that we've seen in our firms. And so this is from 24 before implementing ZebraWorks. And now I'm going to move forward to 25. And what we saw in 24 was exactly the kind of lockup that you normally see in, so let me pop back there for a second. Days to bill, days to pay for a large mid-sized firm. This is exactly what you would expect to see. So total lockup of 152 days. So that's how long it's taking us from when we do the work to when we get paid for it. Now I'm going to move forward to 25 after we've implemented the workflows and processes and all the things that we were talking about. And we've taken some of the time out for days to bill, but had a really dramatic impact on days to pay. And this is a bit more than a 40% reduction in total lockup. Our average across our clients is a 15%. This is coming from 3 firms that I've taken to model their results that have chosen to not only implement what we're doing, but then really push that forward based on those results. And it's very realistic to do this in your firm if you choose to take it on. And that 60-day reduction in lockup, if you're doing $100 million a year, that's $15 million that you're adding to your working capital, that you're pulling cash forward. So the results from doing this are quite impressive. And then if we look at realization and do the same thing, of course, one of the great benefits of pulling your days to pay down. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start in 24. I'm going to see what my realization rate was like in 24. So pretty standard number there. And now I'm going to move forward to 25 and see what are the results now that I've reduced my days to pay. That's going to have a direct impact on write-offs. And so we got a 190 basis point improvement in overall realization. Firm of this size, that's $1.5 million to the bottom line.
That's dramatic.
So that's the reason why this is relevant and worth tackling. And even if you just implement the automation and the workflows and you get more of the standard 15% reduction, that's very significant.
And you mentioned, now where does AI come into play here on
Yeah,
this
so
process?
I'm a huge fan of practical and boring AI. And so what we're doing is applying machine learning to the financial information from the firm's billing system. And so we're creating a data warehouse out of the full billing history from 3E, Aderant, whatever the financial management system is. And then we're using that to do a couple of really important things. So one is we're forecasting the expected payment date at the invoice level. So of course we can do a cash receipts forecast based on that. But I think more important is that we know whether or not a given invoice should have been paid, and we can therefore prioritize our collection efforts based on that. Because what happens all the time is you have a client who's on net 30 terms, and they're going to pay on day 35, day 36, over and over again, which means that often, if they don't pay this month on time, doesn't get entered in the AP system correctly, or there's some sort of challenge, we're not going to pick up on it until it hits over 60. It'd be much better to follow up on that on day 40 than day 65. So that is a really easy way to pull lockup in. Then we also do a relative creditworthiness score so that we can take the clients that have the highest risk of becoming write-offs and really focus on those clients in terms of our collection efforts. So those two things right there have a direct impact on reducing lockup and reducing write-offs.
Okay, so your system's laying on top of Mattern or three, whatever accounting system, time billing system a firm's using. And then you're applying AI best practices and really just a dashboard type reporting to really let firms know where they're at in regards to their invoices, to getting paid, all in one nice, neat little package.
Exactly. And we're doing things at two levels. One is the big picture analysis, so we can go in and find opportunities. So when we're looking at realization, being able to understand how are we doing by office, how are we doing by practice area, how are we doing by billing attorneys. So showing peers how they're performing relative to each other is a very effective technique. So if I was looking at this and I saw this attorney, I would probably want to dive into that and understand why is realization so low for that attorney. These little blue dots are how much we're billing. I'm going to look for where the blue dot is up high and we have something that's outside the norm for the firm. And that's where I'm going to want to dive in and understand what's going on. And then we want to do these just like basic day-to-day things that make our process so much faster. For example, we're going to analyze the cash receipts every day. So we've already made the cash application so much easier because of what Ken was talking about. We've made the process much easier for the client to pay, and then we're applying those payments in the financial management system automatically. And then each collector can come in and look at the payments that have come in for the prior day on their matters and say, where have we had partial payments? Where have we had skipped invoices? Because that's just obvious follow-up that we should do every day
Right.
to pull cash forward. I was talking earlier about prioritizing collections on expected payment date and creditworthiness. So here's exactly that list of prioritizing based on those two things. We have somebody where we've missed the expected payment dates on various invoices, and we're going to tackle those in order of where the highest risk is in order to maximize the value of our collection efforts. And then we're going to go in and run AR campaigns on top of that. So we're going to say, I want to focus this week on campaigns for clients who owe us more than $50,000. And hopefully in your firm, you're going to have much better internet than I do. But that's the core idea, which is that you get the big picture analysis and the day-to-day, just how do we find opportunities to pull cash forward? How do we more intelligently run our campaigns so that we're getting more value out of those people that we were talking about before?
Interesting. Okay, start to finish. How long does it take to implement your system, and how many man hours a firm should expect to invest?
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm really proud of in how we do our implementation is that, so we want to start with, I'm not a big fan of huge wholesale change. So we want to start with the low-hanging fruit, and improving bill delivery is often the first thing that we do. And that is typically a 4, 5, 6, 7 day process in a firm. They finalize the bills, and then it takes another week to actually get the bills delivered. And so in the first month, we can implement bill delivery and save more time than it's taking to do the implementation. And so the reason that's so important is there's always way too much to do. If you're in the accounting, billing, collections department of a law firm, you have way too much to do. So you don't need another massive project. So our goal is to save you more time in that first billing cycle than it's taking to implement. Now, depending on the size of firm, you get to a larger firm, you're rolling out across offices, across billing attorneys. Obviously, it's going to be a larger project to do that. But typically, we do it in those kind of phases. We're going to focus on bill delivery. We're going to focus on making the payment process smoother. Then we're going to go in and automate the follow-up for AR collections. Then we're going to get to the analysis and starting to leverage what we're finding by going in and really working with the data.
Okay, and you handle that, or you work with a firm for that entire implementation?
We do the implementation work ourselves because we feel like there should be one responsible party for the whole process.
Okay. Okay. So you break it down into bite-sized pieces, install it that way. The whole process, soup to nuts, a year, 6 months?
It's very firm size dependent. So in a 100 attorney firm, it's a 3-month project for soup to nuts. In a 500 attorney firm, it can be a 6 to 9 month project, but
Okay.
there's real value that's coming out early in the project. It's because we're choosing to phase it in. We could do it much faster if that's what the firm needs, but typically it works better to phase it in over time.
And let me ask, how do you get paid? How does the firm pay for a system like this?
So it's just a subscription for the software.
Based upon how many users? How many
It's on the
attorneys?
size of the firm based on number
Side of
of
the firm?
yeah.
Do you get any firm saying, hey, listen, how about we just pay you a cut of our increased collections?
I love that idea, but that hasn't come up yet. No.
Okay.
We would
Well,
make
if
way
you,
too much money doing that, so I'm not sure that would be. So Ken, we should reevaluate our whole plan here.
Yeah, that could be an option, right? Yeah. At least throw it out there.
I'll tell you, I'll get firms that would say we go by a fixed fee, and they say, why don't I just give you a percentage of the savings? I said, you won't want to do that.
Right? It'd
And they'll
Way
say,
too
why
much.
not? Yeah, it's way too much. I said, someone's going to end up unhappy, and chances are it's going to be you. But there's an attraction to it. It's easier to sell. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I hear you. So let me ask you again, I'm going back to my original question. Why wouldn't a firm go down this path?
So
Like,
it's hard
what are
for,
the objections
yeah,
here?
it's hard for us to answer because we don't, I can't come up with a good reason why they wouldn't. But at the same time, it's like any software thing, right? Like they might have point solutions that they're in a contract for, right? Or they might have tried something before and they don't want to get burned again because of prior experience. Oftentimes, what you'll hear is we've got so much going on. And if you can't get to the point of explaining what the project lift would be, then that's a challenge. And then ultimately just the change management because we're affecting a few different things here. We're touching obviously the finance group. We're also touching attorneys and their assistants as well, impacting them. And then also there's client aspects of their clients because it's a different payment portal and albeit maybe it's better and easier and all those things. Those are all different points of change. And so that's what you have to really convince that it's worth doing. And that's one of the nice things. And when in a prior life selling practice management systems, sometimes you're 16, 18 months into the project before you're ever doing any live components. So as Bill mentioned, by kicking off improving the billing process within the first 30, 45 days, you're already showing some value. And then
Exactly.
that helps the rest of the change occur. That's my opinion, at least, Bill.
Yeah, I agree. And just to show what the process looks like, here's the big picture on the implementation. So this is an overview. This would be your typical mid-size to large mid-size firm of what the process is like. And so we're doing a direct sync with the financial management system. It's a near real-time sync. In a larger firm, we're going to set that up as a test sync first and then move that to production. And the work in getting early results is setting up the workflows, and we get great results from the first few that just handle all of the basic cases. And then over time, we come back and handle more and more of the exceptions that are just the things that are frustrating and taking up people's time. But the key about our system is that all those workflows, all the email templates, all of that's available and accessible to the firm. So they have complete power over being able to set up new workflows to handle new things as they come up. They don't have to constantly call for support or bring on professional services in order to get those kinds of changes into place. The only thing that really takes a lot of time, and that's a relative statement, is it just takes a little more time to do because all of our AI training is firm specific. And so in a larger firm, training the ML models against their data, that takes a little bit of time. And so that's what it is at the end of the project. But there's a ton of value that comes out of the data even before we get the models trained up.
Yeah, we do a lot of work in information governance, really trying to get firms to migrate away from paper and move to the whole digital world. And really, the attorneys talk about change management, but it's really the attorneys have to change the way they work. Okay. And it's just, as we already talked about, it's a slow process and some people don't like change, but there's a benefit to it. Here, really what you're doing is putting more cash in the partners' pockets at the end of the year. So you think they would be like begging to get a system like this in place? Now, I know I'm greatly simplifying it, but really, the bottom line, you're showing a real cash result in a relatively short amount of time that could really turn around, be a sizable increase to what they're getting paid.
It is, and I think the reason that we are seeing real growth in what we're doing here is because we have significant number of firms that are live in production that are getting real results, and so the word is starting to get out.
Okay. Anything you want to add to the discussion or questions I didn't ask, or did I seem like too big a cheerleader, or?
No, you're asking the right questions. We greatly believe in what we're doing, and it continues to get better. And I steal Bill's line all the time, but we'd love to think we're brilliant, but mainly what we're really good at is just listening. And so a lot of this is just listening to what clients say that they need. And every new implementation brings up new suggestions and things. Have you thought about this and so forth? So it's a lot of fun being able to have a company that's agile enough to incorporate those changes near real time when clients need them. So I'm having a good time. So that's part of it. What about you, Bill?
Yeah, absolutely. I spent most of yesterday with a client, and being able to get that feedback and see where we want to go, what's working well today, and where do we want to go next is there's nothing better for me. I love doing
Absolutely.
it.
Good deal. I tell you, I know we've been talking about increasing the revenue or the collections. I'm just going to take a minute and just highlight what we have rolled out in the marketplace, and it's our AI-based benchmarking tool. And a lot of times we'll get questions. We just did the ALA show a couple of weeks ago and do shows throughout the year. And the big question we always get is, hey, how much can you save me? Or I think we do a pretty good job. I don't think you can save anything. So we created this web-based, AI-based costing tool that all you have to do is enter the number of attorneys, and I'll choose 500. You have to enter your email. That's going to come up next. And then we're going to provide all the areas that we consult in. Administrative services, office supplies, in-house, outsourcing, offsite record storage is a big one, and cost recovery, what we can increase your recoveries on, and legal research. And I'm just going to select offsite record storage because that's something that everyone wants to get out of. And what we've done is take all our results for the past 29 years, put them into AI, along with the contract terms, and that's the next part we're going to roll out. And we're going to tell you how much you should be paying for offsite record storage and what's our typical involvement is worth. So 500 attorneys, they should be spending about $1 million a year on offsite record storage, which is amazing unto itself. And typically when we get involved, we're able to save you about $210,000. So it's a great tool if you want just a quick back of the envelope type projection on what you would be able to save. Again, you're making all this cash now through Zebraworks, you know what I'm saying? But what you would be able to save by taking a look at these certain areas.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's worked out well. Okay, anything, we're going to wrap this up. Any questions or comments you want to throw out there?
There's a question that we should answer, Rob, which is, has ZBrush been implemented with Adderant Sierra, which it has. And so our integration with Adderant Sierra is just like Adderant and it works really well.
Good deal. Any other questions that I missed?
While we're on that, we might as well say 3E Cloud and on-prem as well, and Adderant Sierra and all the versions for the most part. Yeah. But no, I think you've led it well, Robert. I think we've touched on all of it. Yeah.
You guys have a lot of great talking points and great thing to sell. So
it's been a great conversation. Appreciate it.
No, appreciate it too. And take care. And if there's any follow-up questions from the audience, send them in. We'll make sure we get an answer and get back to you. So again, thank you very much for joining. And we'll see you next month at our next coffee.
Yeah, we got one more question from, does this work with, with ARCS? And it does. We have a partnership with ARCS. Works great with ARCS, and we don't replace Bill Blast. We just work with Bill Blast.
Okay. Let me just refresh and see if there's any more questions that are coming in.
Just had to get that last one in as you're trying to close out, Rob.
Yeah, that's what they like to do. Okay, I don't see any other questions. Oh, wait, hang on. No, you got it. Okay, I don't see anything else. So again, thank you very much. Great job, Bill. And hang on.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Bill.
Okay.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.